You know, when you picture an English rose, you probably think of something just bursting with petals, overflowing with this incredible fragrance. It's the very definition of romance, right? But what you're really picturing isn't just a flower. It's the result of a quiet revolution, a 70-year quest by one man to bring poetry back into the garden. So let's just think about this for a second. Imagine it's the 1950s. The rose, this timeless symbol of love and beauty, well, it had a problem. It was kind of losing its soul. And this was the big challenge that a young farmer's son, a man named David Austin, decided he was going to solve. And this slide just lays it all out perfectly. See, on one side, you've got the most popular rose of the day, the hybrid tea. It was bred for flower shows, long stems, a perfect pointy bud. But the plant itself, often pretty gangly, stiff, and worst of all, it had lost that amazing signature fragrance. Then on the other side, you had the old garden roses from centuries past, all lush, shrubby, romantic, and just intoxicatingly scented. But they usually only bloomed once a year. So the choice was basically modern performance or historic charm. You couldn't have both. So in this explainer, we're going to follow David Austin's incredible journey. We'll start with the problem he saw, dig into his unique philosophy, witness the unbelievable patience it takes to create just one new rose, decode the anatomy of his creations, and finally, see how his work completely changed the modern garden as we know it. Okay, so let's really set the scene here. We're in the post-war era, and the garden world is just dominated by hybrid teas and floribundas. The whole focus was on novelty, brighter colors, bigger blooms. But something really essential was getting lost in the process. The poetry of the rose. It was fading. And here's the thing you've got to understand. Roses were being bred not as garden plants, but as vessels for a single perfect flower you could cut and stick in a vase or enter into a competition. This led to these plants that looked really awkward and leggy out in the garden, with hardly any foliage and little to no scent. They were specimens, right? Not living, breathing parts of a beautiful landscape. But then came David Austin. And he wasn't some formally trained botanist. He was a farmer with a deep, deep passion. His sister gave him a book on old garden roses for his 21st birthday, and it sparked this obsession, this one single idea. What if you could combine the breathtaking beauty of the old with all the benefits of the new? And this quote, this was his guiding light. He actually came up with the word charm to describe his goal. For Austin, a rose wasn't just about the flower. It was about the entire plant, the shape of the shrub, the health of the leaves, the complexity of the fragrance. It all had to work together. It had to be a harmony. What's so fascinating here is how clearly this shows the two completely different mindsets. While the traditional breeders were obsessed with those high-centered, pointed buds for shows, Austin was chasing after these cupped, quartered rosettes. While they were breeding stiff, upright plants for formal rose beds, he wanted bushy, arching shrubs that would look amazing in informal gardens. And maybe most importantly, where scent was just an afterthought for so many, for David Austin, it was a non-negotiable primary goal. So, okay, he had the vision. That's one thing. But turning that vision into a living, breathing plant, well, that required a level of patience that is just, it's almost impossible to wrap your head around. This wasn't something you could do in a year or two. This was a marathon, a lifetime's work. It all starts with this number. Every single year, the David Austin Breeding Program harvests and plants around 350,000 seeds. Each one is a totally unique genetic lottery ticket, a potential new rose. The sheer scale is just staggering. And from the moment a breeder carefully hand-pollinates one flower with another, it takes, on average, 12 years before a new rose is even considered ready for the market. A full 12 years of testing, observing, and just waiting. So after all that time, from that initial pool of 350,000 seeds, guess how many make the final cut? Just 1 to 3. 1 to 3 new varieties per year. The selection process isn't just tough, it's absolutely ruthless. This pipeline here shows you the whole incredible journey. It kicks off with 40,000 individual hand pollinations. After the seed sprout, the first massive cut happens. Then comes the most critical stage, 5 to 8 years of field trials, where the roses are grown with no chemical sprays at all to prove their natural, real-world resilience. Only the absolute toughest, healthiest, and most beautiful survive to the end. So, after that 12-year ordeal, what do you get? What are the specific ingredients that make up that charm David Austin was searching for?
Let's break it down. Let's decode the anatomy of an English rose.
First off, the architecture of the flower itself is a world away from a hybrid tea. Austin literally revived these gorgeous, historic forms. You've got the cupped shape, which is like a little teacup full of petals, the rosette, with dozens and dozens of petals all packed together, the quartered form, which is a classic look from the old Gallica roses, and often you'll see this tiny button eye right in the center. It's all this complexity that gives the blooms that deeply romantic character. And then there's the fragrance. Now, this wasn't just about making a rose smell nice. Oh no. Austin and his team actually categorized the scents into 5 distinct families. They elevated fragrance from a happy accident to a precise science.
And this is just so cool. The old rose scent, that's the classic, rich perfume we all think of. Tea comes from the China roses, and it actually smells like a fresh packet of tea leaves. Myrrh is totally unique to Austin's roses. It's this anise-like scent he bred in from an old Scottish climbing rose. Fruity can be anything from apple to raspberry to lychee. And musk. Musk is really special because it doesn't come from the petals, it comes from the stamens, and it has this amazing ability to carry on the air.
So when you put it all together, that bushy, graceful habit, those incredibly complex blooms, the unbelievable fragrance, it didn't just create a new kind of rose. It sparked a whole new way of thinking about gardening. And this right here is the real game changer. For decades, roses were kept separate, in their own formal beds, like little soldiers in a row. But Austin's creations were designed to be part of a bigger picture, a tapestry. Their graceful, arching shapes look absolutely perfect next to perennials like lavender, salvia, and foxgloves. They helped create that lush cottage garden look that is so incredibly popular today. He didn't just sell a plant, he sold a whole new aesthetic. Of course, the journey had its big moments. In 1961, his very first rose, Constance Spry, proved there was an audience out there who wanted what he was creating, even though it only flowered once a year. But the real explosion, the breakthrough moment, was the 1983 Chelsea Flower Show. The introduction of the yellow Graham Thomas and the pink Mary Rose. It caused a global sensation. The world finally saw what he'd been working on, almost in secret, for decades, and the English rose became a phenomenon. David Austin passed away in 2018, but his incredible work continues, and it really leaves us with this thought. In our world of instant everything, his entire life was a testament to slow, deliberate, patient creation. A 12-year journey repeated over and over and over, all to bring a very specific kind of beauty into the world. It really makes you stop and wonder, doesn't it? What remarkable things might we create in our own lives if we just gave them enough time?